Hello, everyone. Welcome to the SAG-AFTRA podcast. I'm Duncan Crabtree Ireland, SAG-AFTRA National Executive Director and Chief Negotiator. In today's episode, we're going to listen in on a revealing panel discussion that took place at LA Comic-Con in early October. The panel explored the crucial but often overlooked work of movement performers, stunt performers, and voice actors in bringing video game characters to life. The panel was moderated by Lindsay Rousseau, a voiceover and performance capture artist, and featured Sarah Elmale, a leading voice actor in video games and the chair of our Interactive Media Agreement Negotiating Committee, otherwise known as the Video Games Agreement Negotiating Committee. Jasiri Booker, a stunt performer and motion capture artist, Andy Norris, a movement performer specializing in creature work, and Seth Allen Austin, an actor and movement performer. As we'll hear, it truly takes a village to bring video game characters to life. Behind every character, there's a team of creatives, each contributing their unique expertise to craft and facing unique challenges. So without further delay, let's visit center stage at LA Comic-Con 2024.
For those people who might not be familiar, what is your all's job? Like, what do you do? When you show up, you show up on a volume, right? That's what we call it, the volume. Kind of give us a breakdown of what this crazy performance capture world embodies.
When I think most people think of what performance capture is, it's wearing the suit with the dots, being captured by... The volume is a big white open space that you are in that is kind of like the lack of a set, but we are paid to create entire worlds in our imagination and make you believe that we see it by how we move through it. There's tons of different facets of performance capture and motion capture that we go in. Our days can look very different depending on what we're there to do. Fun story, most of the time we don't know what we're going to do until we are there and they tell us day of. Yeah, that's usually our faces too. Yeah. We're doing what? Which comes with its own challenges in itself. Problem solvers is one of the things we have to do. We've been on sets where we're playing some of the most acrobatic characters known to man, and on TV and film, you would have the assistance of wires or a rigging team or air rams or any sort of pre-planned goodies and tools we can use, and we have to figure out how to do it with shoeboxes and still make you believe it. I think the two primary days are like cinematic days and in-game days, and they can both be very different.
What does that mean? What is a cinematic and what's an in-game?
So when you're playing a video game and the game kind of stops and you have like a mini movie, like your cutscenes, right? That's a cinematic. It's anything that is actually moving the story forward. It is separate from gameplay. And in-game movement or navigation or locomotions is everything that has to be captured for your character or any of the NPCs to be moved around in the game. So all of your walks, your runs, your turns, your jumps, your deaths, your vaults, they all need to be captured by a movement performer. You don't often have one performer that creates a character. And we've kind of gotten into that here with a number of different characters. Like Seth and I have played the same characters in the same game on different days because one of us happened to be on set, right? Mm-hmm. But ultimately, you can have what did you say, like up to seven different people maybe playing the same character?
Oh yeah.
Because you've got your voice actor, and usually that's one person. Sometimes they do their own cinematic scenes. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they bring in a movement performer to do that. Sometimes there's a stunt double. Sometimes there's a specialty movement double, right? If you have like creature work or specific acrobatics that need to be done. A contortionist.
Mm-hmm. I know in the voiceover world, sometimes you're contracted to provide multiple voices. Mm-hmm. And the same goes for us in the movement community. You could be brought on with a particular skill like Jasiri to be able to flip all over the place, but then like, okay, we need more body types out of you. So can you also play an old lady with a limp? Can you also play an uptight businessman? Can you also play a frog? And you have to, on the spot, be able to do that.
Sometimes also an uptight business frog.
It's true.
So I think a lot of people have been to panels and they've heard voice actors talk about, oh, this is how I create a character. And yeah, I go in, I record my 3 voices, my 4 voices, and they don't always sound the same. But you all are having to physically represent, not just change your voice, you're having to physically represent multiple characters in an 8-hour day, sometimes have been recorded before, sometimes haven't. How do you find that character? I mean, like you just said, you don't often know what you're doing till you walk into the room. They're not saying, please prepare, this character in advance. They just throw these characters at you. What goes into preparing and doing it right then?
I think there's a lot of different processes depending on what the character is. For me personally, I like people watching. I think movement is a form of storytelling, but it uses body language instead of words. And in some ways, it's a lot harder to generate emotion through how you move or intention through how you move. Growing up, I watched a lot of Animal Planet. I love watching nature documentaries and seeing how different animals move and kind of how we perceive animals and the associations that we have with them. Like, what makes a tiger so imposing? What about their movement, their musculature, how they move? Why does that evoke a certain type of feeling in us and kind of the zeitgeist of people? Because there is sort of a collective conscious that is somewhat unified. So I think for me, it's a lot of analysis, looking first, watching first, and then a lot of self-work of like, okay, how do I move with intention? And then if I know the character beforehand, I do a lot of research of playing around with different movement types. My background is parkour and free running. I have some martial arts backgrounds. So maybe this certain character has a very primal element to it. They're a hunter of some sort. So finding, okay, what is that person taking inspiration from? What do they find fascinating or powerful or interesting, and kind of going in that direction and finding movement types that are able to exemplify that.
So, I think that I'm so excited about this panel because we get to show the similarity in how we work. As someone who mainly does voice, I mean, it's the same stuff that, as Lindsay was saying on every panel, like, oh yeah, I have to create characters on the spot. I have to be able to differentiate them. I don't get preparation in advance, and just the same degree of creativity and spontaneity and expertise is like on this panel through movement. And I just love that we get to spotlight that. But I'm really curious, like, sometimes hearing you talk about like understanding who the character is and what they respond to, voice, not me, but some voice actors really like to start with a laugh. There's like a hook. There's like some piece of like who that character is that once they find that, they understand who that character is. And I'm just really curious, if you go in and they're like, okay, cool, do this flip. And you're like, actually, do you think we could spend some time walking first? Like, is there something in a character's movement that helps you hook or establish the rest of the character in your process? And do you have the flexibility to advocate for that, to like ask for that?
It kind of depends on the character, but the idle or the walk, definitely. Once I have that, then I have kind of the grounded nature of this character. But The Last Sentinel has signed our interim agreement, which is excellent. And so I have a story about working on the vertical slice for this game, that I was hired as pretty much just a movement performer for the vertical slice of this. And there's this scene in there where they're in a sushi restaurant like cable car, and they have their primary actors. And then they had like 3 or 4 of us, and we were meant to fill out the entire rest of that restaurant. Mm-hmm. And so it was all day, come up with a new character, a new character, a new character. And so in like every take, and explaining to, I think on that day I was the only actor who had any performance capture experience either. And so I was explaining to the other actors, it's not like TV and film. The takes don't have to be the same, because they can take like my movement from this take and their from this take. It doesn't have to match up. So we can actually build out 10 times as many characters as they're expecting, right? And so once I had explained that to the other actors, we got on this roll of like every take was a different character, and we would come up with a different hook, right? It would be like, I would find a fidget, and then I would be like, okay, I'm like a nervous little 10-year-old girl. Let's go. Who are you to me? Like, what's our relationship when we walk in this room? Or it would be a limp, and then I would be like, okay, no, I'm like an 85-year-old grandma now, right? And so it really depends, and it's whatever. It's kind of anything that I find particularly interesting or unique, and on set, I've always been able to advocate for that. Mm-hmm. I remember there was another game that I won't say what name it was, and I had to stay in this creature position that was like a really like awkward, uncomfortable creature position, and I had to take all of the walk cycles from there and the run cycles from there. They kept telling me like, you don't have to start in an idle, but I was like, I need that for me. I need to have the breathing. The breathing was what grounded me in that.
Do people know what an idle is? Maybe we could define.
Good call. Do you want to try?
An idle is an animation where a character is like standing still or in a neutral state. So typically they don't want to just leave the character in one position because they look dead or stiff. And so there's like a life or some sort of activity to let you know that the character is alive. So that's an idle. Fidgets are like in that idle, you might break away from that to give some flavor or excitement. So it's like you're standing there, you're breathing, and it's like, oh, look over your shoulder. What's that? Okay, back to focusing. Or like maybe characters that are like more feral, maybe they'll like scratch themselves or sniff the air or something. Some sort of fidget, some sort of tick that they have to break up the idle.
There's a podcast by Crispin Freeman. And even though I had been working on motion capture and performance capture for a long time, he said a catchphrase that made me think about my own job. And I went, oh, I guess that does make sense. Where he goes, motion capture is more related to puppetry than it is acting. Because I know on camera, like we are rewarded for stillness on camera because, they can get up close. We're seeing your real face. Any twitch of your eye or dilation or anything is read by a camera. But when you're turned into a 3D model of something and you are completely still, it looks like the game broke. So like even breathing's just like a few degrees heightened, just a little bit more up and down of the shoulders. Yeah. Oh, and I know voiceover performers do this all the time. When you're in the booth and they're like, give us a run. And you're like, I'm going to pass out because you're in the booth going... and we go through the same thing. We're like, okay, especially if you're like a big feral type creature and you're standing there in idle and you're just... and they're like, can we go bigger? Just a little bit bigger, okay? And you're like... and then by the end, you're like...
So... You guys, I just kind of want to point this out if people haven't picked up on it. You keep referring to yourselves as movement performers, not stunt performers, And I know you all work in film and television as well. And Seth, as you just said, well, in TV and film, you prized with, you are, being still is very important. Why do you refer to yourselves as movement performers? What is it about this medium that is so unique and why what you all bring to the table is so crucial to the production of these games?
I consider myself a movement performer, not a stunt performer, because I have my background in acting. Ever since I was a little kid, I would, before I even knew what the heck I was doing, I was up in the front section, the concrete section in front of a movie theater screen while the credits were rolling, dancing, just because I knew I wanted to perform, right? I didn't know what stunts were or anything like that. But being a bouncing young boy, I love the Ninja Turtles, I love Batman, I love the Power Rangers, any sort of ninja, anything. And that kind of like inspired what I like to do. And I did martial arts, but even in that, I did martial arts because I love the art of it. I did fight from time to time, but I preferred doing the forms, which is like a choreographed. I think you're nodding like you know exactly what it is. Yeah, it's a choreographed routine where kind of the same thing. These katas were developed so that you could, in your head, see the enemy attacking you, and you could initiate these techniques that would simulate you defending yourself in real life. And the more when you're competing, if you could see these people attacking you, the judges can see it. So like just performing more and more and more. I came out here to act because of the physical and martial art background I had. I got into the stunt industry, met tons of good friends, and I had a million opportunities which were given to me that I think went above and beyond what a normal actor would get. Where most people would have to wait tables, I was able to throw myself into the ground face first. And I only had to do that like...
Kind of the same thing.
Yeah, but I only had it but I could do it safely and I could repeat that. And I would be paid for it so that I could have more off time to work on my craft instead of having to go work, 4 hours in a restaurant night after night after night after night and then come home and going like, I really don't want to do this anymore. So then when I found video games and I found performance capture and motion capture, it was, I think, the most honest blend between my two worlds, between acting and stunts. I think if you, to have a prolonged career in this, if you are solely a stunt performer and you are very physically talented, you are needed. Yeah. If you are an actor and you are trained with your voice, you are needed. But this is a world where every character can do a backflip. And if you can merge those two, if you can do the backflip but in character, then that's where I go, I'm not so much a stunt guy. And that's why I love this part of the industry more, because I'm able to inject my creativity into everything I do instead of just be a yes sir, no ma'am kind of stunt grunt, you know?
Day playing or like showing up as just your rank and file stunt person, unless like later on in your career you'll get into positions where you are able to give your creative input, but for the most part on TV and film you're a yes man. So for me, in high school I knew that I wanted to do stunts. I was doing parkour and free running, and I knew that I wanted to do something with my body. I was pursuing this opportunity to do stunts. I went on a run for a movie. It was Army of the Dead, so I was out 6 weeks doing the thing that I wanted to do. And at the end of it, I was like, this is cool. This is so much better than any desk job, any day job, but I'm so unfulfilled. A lot of times it's like you go to give your ideas and they're like, shut up. I just need you to fall. I just need you to be shirtless and slide on this carpet. It's like, okay. And so there's parts of it where it's like, it's an amazing, fun job, but creatively I could feel myself like atrophy. And so I feel like when you're on a video game set, you're with a lot of other creatives, and the team is a lot smaller, so you can give more of yourself to those roles and apply, or at least for me, I can apply my physicality and my enthusiasm for the different characters of the medium in a way that was much more fulfilling for me. When I think of things that inspired me, Seth was saying like Power Rangers was something that was so inspiring to me. It's like, yeah, the fighting was cool, but when I think about it, it's more of like the symbol, right? Their movements in the suit. It's cool that Tommy Oliver is Tommy Oliver, but Tommy Oliver is the Green Ranger, right? And that could be anybody. And the person in the suit doing the movements is what gives so much inspiration and so much life. You can't see their face, but you can see their body posture. You can see the confidence without any expression on their face. And that to me is something very special.
I just want to say, folks who may not know, we are on strike. What I'm hearing is just tying into that in a way that makes me sad, angry, and also motivated. Because one of the things that we've been told there's a mixed practice of covering movement performers on union contracts, which is, and the justification for that, performer as a title, as a covered category, is very explicit in our contract. And so in order to do that, in order to tell these folks that they don't deserve a union contract, they have to tell these folks that they're not performers, which I think is obscene. And it's wild, because what you're hearing like from every person down the line is that what they're drawn to do in this work and what they're celebrated for in this work, what they're asked to do in this work, is to bring their imagination. They're not just falling. They're really collaborating on aspects of these characters, from the flips and everything else to how they take up space at rest. I mean, when you think about how much of a game character you're seeing and experiencing from these folks' performance versus voice even, I mean, it's so much more screen time and so much more character information coming out of what they do. And so the hypocrisy of that, personally, I think is just pretty galling. But if you are connecting with some of these stories and starting to appreciate how much of them, how much is the life that they bring to these characters, I hope you will follow our fight and support them.
So one of the things, Jasiri, that you brought up is the collaboration side of it, and you all have talked about this. You are a lot of times, I guess most of the time, creating these characters on the fly. When you think you're on set, you think, oh, there's a director. The director is telling us what to do, hit this mark, blah, 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 blah. That's not usually the case with you all. And also, a lot of times, like Sarah just said, the voice actor maybe has already recorded their voice. And now you're having to match that as well. So what is that collaborative process that you all are having to do? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Video games is so beautiful because it is, there are so many people that touch one character, and that's not even just on the movement side. If you go to the technical side, right, the people who clean up your data afterward, right, you go, you shoot the scene, you have a bunch of data, it's like muddy, it's fidgety, so there's somebody who has to like fix the points and interpret it and not mess that up, right? It goes to somebody else. They refine that even more. Then it goes to an animator who uses some or all of your data or mixes that data with other things in another creative way. Then you have somebody who lights it. You have somebody who's creating the mesh for the character. You have somebody, like, there's so many people There's the coders. There's so many things that make the character. And so being able to have a hand in it is really awesome. There's something beautiful about it, that it's like so many people coming together to make the idealized version of a superhero, right? Now it does come with some downsides. Again, like on set, you don't always have a director that is like a trained director. Usually it's like the animator who's tasked with doing that scene or that chunk of animation. And sometimes there's some translation that you need to do, because I heard this phrase recently, so I'm going to steal it. Sometimes it's like, bring me a rock, right? Somebody says, hey, go bring me a rock. And you come with this rock and you're like, here it is. They're like, no, not that rock. That rock's stupid. So it's like that sometimes there is a right answer, and you are trying to find like, okay, that's a no. That's a no. This is a yes, kind of, and trying to find somewhere in here, there's a right answer. This person may not know how to communicate that. And I need to try to interpret what they're saying, or the feeling that they're trying to evoke with whatever material they've given me, whether it's like concept art or a previs, or maybe some of the script, to kind of say like, okay, this is how I think this character kind of moves, or you want this kind of attack, does this work? Because sometimes, depending on how far along you are in the development cycle of the game, it's gone through design, so that the combat designers know that, okay, this attack needs to be like a whip thing. And you show up on set, it's like, it'd be really cool if this is like a sword thing. And they're like, that's really cool, but no. So there's this weird thing of trying to play catch up to see like, okay, where are you in your development? What have you already said no to? And what do I have to kind of like figure out and fill in the gaps for?
I think also, at least when it comes down to the movement performer and the voiceover actor, I personally love it when we're in the same room at the same time and we're able to work in real time on that one character. I've been very blessed to work with the voiceover actors who they are credited as the character, but when we're in the room, there's no, okay, but this is mine, right? It's like we both realize that we are both artistic beings, and we're bringing both of ourselves, the integrity and everything needed to bring this one character to life. We yes and each other. To get together, we make it better, because we both come with our own backgrounds and set of tools that we could use. You know, there's been several times where I've been mistaken for an actual superhero, and they're like, "Do you think you can like jump up there?" And I'm like, "That's 30 feet. Nobody can jump up there. That's what the animator's for." But I love the enthusiasm. But it's also like they don't know my repertoire of moves, you know, and I could have an idea. I go, "Oh, I've been working on this flip," or like, "Ooh, I've seen this thing that I'd really like to try." And then they go like, "Oh yeah, that's awesome." And and maybe we can, like, even that, you feel like that like building of enthusiasm. That's when I really love that kind of stuff. We're not always gifted with working with the other performer at the same time.
I feel robbed. We should have done this trailer together.
I was her. But like, so exactly. There's been plenty of games I've worked on where I call it like chasing dialogue, or I call it body ADR. Does anyone know what ADR is? So like I do like body ADR. So like the dialogue has already been recorded. And you know, usually this is really good for like walk and talk scenes. They could just be standing there and give you this exposition, but that's kind of boring and unfulfilling as a character. So to like kind of mask that we're just giving you exposition, you walk, right? Now the character that you're getting the exposition from could be several feet ahead of you, and you're just enjoying the world. But like, to create more life to that story, every once in a while that person in front of you goes like, right? And like, we're in this, that was me, right? But like, we have to, like, thank you. We have to follow what the actor has already recorded and done. On the flip side, I know this especially happened during the pandemic. There was a lot of game studios were like, this is a whole new world. We got to figure some stuff out. And there was some instances where movement was created first. And there was voice actors having to match to movement. But besides bringing our artistry, we're also paid to be problem solvers.
Andy, I really wanted to, because we've heard, about the movements and the stunts, but, you mentioned you specialize in creature performance. That's like a whole other level. I mean, we're talking about creating a character that maybe you have reference art for, maybe you don't. How do you go about finding that physicality? I imagine, like Jasiri said, you're maybe working with the animators to figure that out, but like, that just seems like a whole other level of creativity that just blows my mind.
Yeah, I mean, you're essentially doing all the same things you do for a human character, only you're not human. Sometimes you're on all fours, sometimes you're on threes, sometimes you're flying. I can't fly. It just
It's like low-key, Andy just is like, yeah, some days I fly.
But I have been in wires. I have been in wires doing flying, floating characters. And it's kind of a similar process. You show up, and usually for creatures, I have concept art. It's pretty rare that they're like, it's vaguely this thing that they talk. Usually there's at least like some basic concept art. And so from there I can start to ask questions. I can say, oh, this creature, it looks really heavy. It's got kind of like the weights in the back. Is that how you want it to move? Do you want it to be sort of like rear leg driven like a horse is? And I compare things to animals all the time. And I think that's just universal, right? We look at anything that's inhuman and we automatically go, oh, it's kind of like a cat, or it's kind of like a snake, or and whether or not it ends up moving like that, it's a great place to start the conversation. And then it also, from that movement center, we can start to talk about the actual character and the characteristics of its personality, or it has motivations just like anything else, whether they're feral motivations or intelligent motivations, depending on how intellectual that creature is.
So what I'm hearing is that you have to have an immense imagination for this job, like insane. Okay, in the last couple of minutes, I would just love to go down and ask you guys, what is something that you wish people understood about the work that you do that they just don't understand, or you wish they knew better, knew more about? And Sarah too.
Me? No. Well, no, I mean, I guess I'll just draw it back to the same comparisons. I think that, voice actors have a higher, in games, maybe not as high as some other kinds of actors, but in games, voice actors, I think, have a certain degree of audience now, which is wonderful and a blessing. And I just feel that the more folks appreciate and understand that the same degree of imagination and skill and expertise and physical risk and physical conditioning, if not more so, obviously, is at play. And the joy of the fact that we share these characters, like I wish I did not spend, when I was chasing, the voiceover I did the voiceover second for the trailer that I won't now say the name of the game again. I wasn't picturing Seth on the ground as my character and what his day of work must have been like. But now I'm so glad that I can have that to think about and wonder about this person who's sharing this character with me. That's so intimate. It's so special. I think that the fact that we can cobble together incredible gifts from multiple people makes games an incredibly special and rewarding space to work in as an actor. And so that's what I would say.
I don't know if I have something that's like, I wish people knew more about this thing that we do. I guess maybe it's who they give credit to, I think, is maybe the only thing. Again, there are so many people that play a role, and obviously it's a marketing strategy. You want the face of your game to be like, you want people to associate them with that character. I don't say this is like a fame thing. I don't want to be like, I want to be known as so-and-so for this, but even the animators, to some degree should have some onus to the character, right? And I think it just opens up the people who are really fans of the content to see what goes into making their favorite characters, right? It's not just X person is this character, right? They are a part of it, but there's so much about a character that's more than just their voice.
In terms of like the collaboration, I'm talking about the fans getting robbed, because there is something about this, especially with creature work, that I found is that when I'm on set, and I do often get to talk to the animators because we're talking specifically about this creature, there is so much love that goes into designing creatures. Like the light I have seen, come on, in some of these animators' faces when they come in to tell me about this, and I won't say what it was, but this like 40-foot monster that's like super in the canon, but this is the first time we're gonna do it this way, and it's gonna have 4 arms, and it's gonna climb, and it's in the lava, and also like, did you see that the way that I animated the skin to move like this? And like, there's so much passion in it, and that someone is trusting me to bring that to life like in that collaboration, that is what I think I wish people knew more, is that unlike in film and television, where you are kind of in a lot of ways a yes man, and you do at some level get to bring in more creative input in those mediums, from here it's from the ground up. Like as soon as you show up on set, they hired you for your creative input, for you to be able to say like, oh, cool, if the skin glistens this way, how about I move it like this so you kind of catch the light when you come through this kind of an area. Like nothing else is like that.
Yeah.
These movement roles in performance capture, we're not using our voice, we're using our body. But besides that, it's an opportunity for artists who are afraid to speak to give you a piece of themselves through how they move. And as you said, we're faced with AI and potentially losing a big chunk of what we can do. And as me and Jasiri said, we were, and Andy too, inspired by Ninja Turtles and the flipping, and we were like, we can do that. And we were inspired by that because someone else a long time ago was like, this is cool, here's what I can do. And we saw it. It's like, oh, here's what I can do, this is cool. And it bounces from generation to generation. And now it's our turn to hopefully inspire a new generation of people, maybe people who are afraid to use their voices, but know how to use their body to tell you a story. And if there's no longer a platform for someone to show you their art, it's not as good of a world anymore.
That is so beautiful, Seth.
Thank you all so much for coming and listening to these amazing stories.
Thank you, guys.
The SAG-AFTRA podcast is produced and edited by Aaron Goddard and John Small. Supervising producers are Pamela Greenwald, Shira Reich, and Mike McNulty, with production and marketing support from Damon Romine, Jalika Conte, Delaney Howard, Margot Giordano, Joe Mulgado, and May Wong. I'm Duncan Crabtree Ireland. See you at the next SAG-AFTRA podcast.